The crate arrived on a Tuesday, which Cael Holt had always considered the worst day of the week for surprises. Mondays had the decency to be obviously terrible. Wednesdays were the midpoint, survivable by mathematics alone. But Tuesdays arrived with the particular cruelty of things that should not be happening yet. And so when the diplomatic courier's shuttle touched down in the outpost hangar at 900 and disgorged a single high-grade reinforced polymer container roughly the size of a wardrobe, Cael stood in the hangar doorway and felt the specific dread of a Tuesday confirming itself. The container was temperature-controlled, pressure-sealed. It had a cheerful red sticker on the upper left panel that read, "Fragile, handle with diplomatic care." Cael stared at it for a long moment. "You sent me a fridge," he said. The diplomatic courier was a small, damp-looking man whose uniform appeared to have been designed for a larger, more confident person, and then assigned to him by accident. He blanched at the word fridge and glanced around the hangar with the nervous energy of someone checking for witnesses. There was only Cael, the container, and a maintenance droid in the corner that had been attempting to weld its own leg back on for the past 3 days with no meaningful progress. "It's not a fridge, Lieutenant," the courier said. "It's your reward." Cael folded his arms. He had been in the military for 11 years. He had received commendations, reprimands, 2 broken ribs, and 1 very sincere apology from a superior officer who had immediately transferred him to a terraform moon. He had never received a reward. The word sat in the hangar air like something that had wandered in from a different kind of story. "My reward," he repeated. "For the Veth Station operation." The courier consulted his data pad with the reverence of a man hiding behind bureaucracy. "Authorized under the Post-Conflict Asset Redistribution Act, subsection 14, paragraph." "What's in it?" The courier cleared his throat. "It's organic, sir." The container hissed. The seal released with a long, pneumatic exhale, like something that had been holding its breath. The front panel lowered slowly, and Cael watched it happen with the focused attention of a man who has learned that the universe will surprise you whether you are paying attention or not, and it is marginally better to be paying attention. She stepped out the way a blade leaves a sheath, the motion clean, deliberate, complete. Tall, with the lean geometry of someone whose body had been shaped by circumstances rather than comfort. Her skin was the color of silvered ash, smooth in the way of something formed under sustained pressure. Her ears rose long and arched from the sides of her head, curving back like the leaves of a plant that had evolved specifically to gather information. They moved a small, continuous adjustment, testing the hangar air, cataloging it. Virelli, Cael recognized the bone structure from the briefing materials. The propaganda feeds had spent 3 years making them look like something between a threat and a mistake. This one looked like neither. She looked like a person, which was somehow the most disorienting thing about the moment. She scanned the hangar once, then she looked at him. Her eyes were very dark, not black exactly, but the deep color of space between stars, and they held the particular quality of someone who has been assessing threats for long enough that it had become involuntary. They assessed him now. He felt the assessment. "You're the human," she said. Her accent was precise, each word placed with deliberate care, as though she had learned the language from documents rather than people, and was now encountering the gap between theory and practice. Cael blinked. "Depends, are you the new coffee machine?" A pause, unlikely. "I make better conversation." The courier cleared his throat with the energy of a man trying to reassert the existence of paperwork. "You'll find her genetic leash is already encoded to your command profile, sir. Fully compliant, legally sanctioned under." "Legally sanctioned," she said. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. "You humans have a remarkable talent for making atrocity sound like a tax form." "Hey," Cael held up one hand. "Be grateful you could have gone to General Mathis. He'd have had you refinishing furniture." Her expression did not change, but something behind it shifted, a calculation, perhaps, or the beginning of one. "I would have set him on fire." "Smarter than the last furniture." The courier made a sound of profound institutional discomfort, and left the hangar at a pace that suggested he had somewhere else to be, and had in fact always had somewhere else to be, and had only been here by administrative error. Cael looked at the container. He looked at her. He looked at the data pad the courier had left behind, which listed her status in the clean, neutral font of official documents: War Compensation Asset, Class 4. Handler, LT, C. Holt. Leash Protocol, active. He put the data pad face down on the nearest surface. "I'm Cael," he said. She looked at him for a moment with the expression of someone deciding how much a name was worth under current conditions. "Seva," she said finally. "There's a sleeping pod down the hall. Not mine, separate corridor, door locks from inside. I don't have a key and I don't want one." He said it plainly, because he did not know how to make it sound like anything other than what it was, and he had learned a long time ago that plain was better than clever when the thing you were saying mattered. "The outpost is yours to move through as you want. I'm not going to follow you around." Seva looked at him with those dark, careful eyes. She was doing the calculation again, he could see it, the same way you could see someone doing arithmetic if you watched their eyes. She was assessing whether he meant it, and what it would cost her if she believed him and was wrong. "You're not going to use it," she said. Not a question, she meant the leash. "No. Why not?" He thought about it honestly, the way he thought about things when there was no one watching and he could afford to be accurate. "Because it would make me someone I don't want to be." Another silence. The maintenance droid in the corner achieved a small arc of sparks and made a sound of mechanical satisfaction. "That's a very convenient moral position," Seva said, "for someone who accepted the delivery." Cael opened his mouth, closed it. She was correct, and they both knew it, and the space between the correct thing and the good thing was exactly the size of a hangar on a terraform moon on a Tuesday morning. "Yes," he said, "it is." Something in her expression shifted again, fractional, the way light shifts when a cloud moves. She looked at the outpost corridor beyond the hangar door, then back at him. "Show me the sleeping pod," she said. Outpost 7 had been built for function, and had achieved something closer to dysfunction with considerable enthusiasm. It occupied a plateau on the moon's northern continent, a region that had been 80% ammonia swamp before the terraform project, and was now 70% dust and 30% government optimism. The gravity generators operated at approximately 85% efficiency on good days, which meant that furniture occasionally achieved a gentle, mournful hover a few inches above the floor, as though quietly attempting escape. The command center contained a cracked holographic map that flickered between star systems and someone's personal screensaver of animated cats. The kitchen processor had opinions. The atmospheric dome had a hairline fracture in Sector 4 that maintenance had been meaning to address for 6 weeks. The whole place had the particular character of something that had been through a great deal and had decided to keep going out of sheer institutional stubbornness. Seva walked through it the way she had walked out of the crate, not like someone being shown a place, but like someone cataloging one. Her ears moved constantly, adjusting to frequencies Cael could not hear. Her eyes went to the corners of rooms first, then the exits, then the ceiling, then to him. He noticed the pattern by the third room and stopped narrating the tour. She noticed that he had stopped. "You can keep talking," she said. "I can assess and listen simultaneously." I wasn't sure if the commentary was helpful. "It isn't, but the silence is louder." She ran one hand along the wall panel outside the sleeping pod corridor, fingers finding the seams with the automatic confidence of someone who understood systems from the inside. "Your infrastructure is compromised in at least 4 load-bearing areas. Your power routing is inefficient by approximately 30%. Your atmospheric filtration will fail within 2 weeks without intervention." Cael looked at the corridor wall, which had not previously seemed threatening. "How do you know that?" "I was a communications specialist," she said. "Communications requires understanding of every system a station runs on. If the power grid fails, communication fails. If the atmosphere fails, the people communicating fail." She said it without inflection, the way you said things that were simply true. "I know infrastructure." "The outpost maintenance droid has been trying to reattach its own leg for 3 days." "I noticed." She looked at the pod door at the end of the corridor. "May I?" He gestured. She went to the door and examined the lock panel, the one that locked from the inside, with the attention of someone who needed to understand exactly how it worked before they could decide whether it meant anything. She pressed the interior lock once, heard the mechanism engage, pressed it again to release. She stood with her hand on the door for a moment. "It works," Cael said. "I know." She did not look at him. "I'm deciding whether that matters." He understood what she meant. A lock that worked was only a fact. What it meant depended on the person on the other side of it, and she had no particular reason yet to have an opinion about him. He was a stranger who had accepted a delivery he should have refused and was now trying to behave well inside an arrangement that should not exist. The lock worked. Whether that was enough was a question only time could answer. "I'll be in the command center if you need anything," he said. "There's food in the kitchen processor, though I'll warn you it has strong opinions about preparation sequences, and the toaster is emotionally unpredictable." Seva looked at him over her shoulder. Emotionally unpredictable. "It screamed at the bread last week. We don't talk about it." The expression that crossed her face then was not quite a smile. It was the ghost of one, present for less than a second, gone before it fully arrived. But it had been there. She went inside, the lock engaged from within. Cael stood in the corridor for a moment, looking at the closed door, thinking about the data pad he had placed face down in the hangar and left there. About the words handler and leash protocol, active in their clean institutional font. About the way she had said you accepted the delivery with the flat precision of someone stating a fact they had decided not to be angry about because anger required a future. He went back to the command center. He turned the screensaver off and looked at the star maps for a long time without seeing them. By the end of the first week, Seva had repaired the atmospheric filtration system using parts from 3 decommissioned comm units, a length of copper conduit, and the emergency espresso machine that Cael had not previously known existed. The repair had involved one controlled explosion in section C4, which she referred to as a calculated pressure release, and which had woken Cael from the first decent sleep he'd managed in a month. "You blew up the filtration system," he said, standing in the corridor looking at the scorch marks. She held up a scorched capacitor. "I improved the filtration system. The explosion was incidental." "Is there a difference?" "Considerable. One suggests incompetence. The other suggests ambition." The maintenance droid, which had finally reattached its leg on day 4 with Seva's assistance, rolled past them both with an air of restored dignity. She had also reorganized the power routing, which had increased overall efficiency by what the outpost computer confirmed was 28%, fixed the flickering holographic map, and had several extended conversations with the toaster in what Cael gradually understood was an attempt at negotiation. He came into the kitchen one morning to find her crouched in front of it, speaking in low, measured tones. "Are you talking to the toaster?" he said. "I'm explaining the social contract to the toaster. Does it understand?" "It understood enough to produce toast without screaming this morning." She stood and handed him a piece. It was, he admitted privately, the best toast he had eaten in 6 months. "Your technology responds to being spoken to. Has no one tried that before?" "We usually just hit it." She looked at him with an expression he was beginning to recognize, the one that meant she had just received additional data confirming a hypothesis she had not particularly wanted confirmed. "That explains a great deal about your species." He ate the toast. It tasted like something made by a person rather than a machine, which was either Seva's influence or the power of suggestion. She ate her nutrient paste at the counter, standing as she always did. He had noticed she did not sit with her back to an open space. She always chose the position with the wall behind her and the door in front. She always checked the room before she entered it. She always knew, he suspected, exactly where he was in the outpost, not because she was tracking him with hostility, but because knowing the position of the most variable element in an environment was simply how she operated. He did not comment on any of this. He understood, imperfectly but genuinely, that it was not his to comment on. What he did, instead, was leave. Not obviously, not every time, but when she was in a room and he had no particular reason to be in it, he found reasons to be elsewhere. He gave her the kitchen in the mornings. He took his reviews to the hangar in the evenings when she used the command center to run calculations he did not ask about. He knocked before entering rooms she had been in. These were small things. He was not sure they added up to anything, but they were what he had. On the 9th day, he found her on top of the central tower where the atmospheric dome met the raw dark of the sky. No environment suit, just her, sitting at the highest accessible point of the outpost, with the stars moving slowly overhead and the wind coming off the dust plains in long, cold sweeps. He opened the comm line from below. "If the dome seal gives, you'll have approximately 4 seconds. Her voice came back through the comm, unbothered. "Then I'll have 4 very interesting seconds." "Why do you always go up?" A pause. When she spoke again, something in her voice was different, not softer exactly, but more considered. as though she had decided to answer the actual question rather than a deflected version of it. "Because your species builds walls," she said, "and mine learned to see over them." Cael stood at the base of the tower and looked up at her small silhouette against the stars. He went to the kitchen. He made 2 cups of rehydrated cocoa using the hot plate, which was the only kitchen appliance that had not yet developed a personality. He climbed to the tower access hatch and left 1 cup at the edge of the platform without climbing out. A moment passed. Her hand reached back and took it. He went back inside. He did not make anything of it. He did not tell himself a story about what it meant. He just went back to the command center and looked at the star maps, and outside, somewhere above him, Seva sat on the top of the world she had been delivered to and drank something warm, and the stars kept moving, indifferent and enormous and entirely unconcerned with the small, difficult human business happening below them. The first week became the second. Cael stopped counting. On the morning of the 14th day, Cael found a note on his data pad written in precise, angular Virelli script with a human translation underneath it in Seva's careful handwriting. "Your COM encryption is 12 years out of date. I have updated it. You are welcome. Also, the toaster has achieved something. I am choosing to interpret it as progress." He read it twice, then he saved it to a personal file he did not name. This was the thing about living alongside Seva that no institutional document had prepared him for. She left traces. Not the traces of someone marking territory or establishing presence, but the traces of someone who was, despite every reasonable argument against it, beginning to exist somewhere. A recalibrated sensor array. A power junction rerouted with a precision the outpost's original engineers would not have recognized as possible. Small annotations in the margins of the maintenance logs, written in her angular script and then translated, as though she had started writing for herself and then remembered there was someone else here who might need to read it. Cael read all of them. He told himself this was practical. Outpost maintenance required understanding what had been modified and why. This was accurate, and it was also not the whole truth, and he was aware of both facts simultaneously. The mornings had developed a shape. She was always up before him. He was not sure she slept the way he did, in long consolidated blocks, or whether she ran on something more distributed and vigilant. By the time he reached the kitchen, she had already eaten, already assessed the outpost's overnight status, already had 2 or 3 observations ready that she delivered with the tone of someone reciting facts and the timing of someone who had noticed they made him laugh. "Your gravity generator in Section B fluctuated at 300, she said on the 15th morning, not looking up from the schematic she was annotating. "The chair in the corner of your sleeping pod achieved brief flight. I noticed. You were not alarmed. I've been at this outpost for 8 months. The furniture moves, you stop taking it personally." He poured the reconstituted coffee and discovered she had adjusted the processor settings, producing something that tasted, for the first time in memory, like an actual beverage rather than a suggestion of one. He stopped, looked at the processor, looked at her. "Did you fix the coffee?" "I adjusted 3 parameters and removed a subroutine that was actively working against you." "The processor had a subroutine working against me." "Your outpost computer confirmed it was implemented by a previous lieutenant who found your predecessor annoying." She looked up then, and the expression on her face was the precise intersection of innocent and aware. "I left the sarcasm filter. It seemed appropriate." Cael drank the coffee. It was significantly better than it had any right to be. "Thank you," he said. She returned to the schematic. Don't thank you. Don't make it into something that requires acknowledgement." She said it without sharpness, flatly, as a preference rather than a rebuke. "I fixed the coffee because the coffee was broken, that's all." He understood what she meant. She was not doing him favors. She was doing things because they needed doing, and she was someone who fixed things that needed fixing, and the fact that he benefited from it was incidental to the act itself. He understood it, and he accepted it, and he also understood that the line between "I fixed it because it needed fixing" and "I fixed it because I am beginning to care about the quality of your mornings" was a line she was not ready to examine, and that it was not his place to examine it for her. "Noted," he said. She glanced at him once, quickly, the way you checked a variable you were not sure about, and then returned to the schematic. On the 19th day, they had their first real argument. It began with the power grid and ended somewhere considerably more honest. Cael had submitted his weekly maintenance report to command using the original power routing figures, which no longer reflected the outpost's actual configuration. Seva had noticed this while reviewing the communication logs. She reviewed the communication logs. He had discovered the way some people reviewed weather forecasts as a matter of practical necessity, and had come to find him in the hangar where he was running a systems diagnostic. "Your report is inaccurate," she said. "My report uses the original spec figures." "The original spec figures are wrong. I rerouted the grid 17 days ago." "I know." He kept his eyes on the diagnostic panel. "If I submit updated figures, Command will ask why the configuration changed. If Command asks why the configuration changed, I have to explain that He stopped, searched for a word, found only the ones the system provided, all of which were wrong. "That you modified it. And if I explain that you modified it, they will want to know why I allowed an asset to access core infrastructure." The word asset landed in the hangar the way words landed when you said them, and immediately understood you should not have. Not because they were cruel exactly, but because they were accurate in the way of the system rather than the way of the truth, and those two things had been diverging steadily for 19 days. Seva was quiet for a moment. "Asset," she said. "That's what the report would call you." "I'm aware of what the report would call me." Her voice was even. That was worse, somehow, than if it had not been. "I am asking whether it is what you would call me." Cael set down the diagnostic tool. He turned to face her because he owed her that at minimum. She was standing with her back to the hangar wall, always the door in sightline, and her arms were not crossed, and her expression was not angry. It was the expression of someone asking a question they genuinely need answered and are genuinely not certain of the response. "No," he said, "it's not what I would call you." "Then your report is inaccurate in two ways." She held his gaze. "File it correctly. Tell them a Virelli specialist rerouted the grid and increased efficiency by 28%. Let them ask their questions." "That will complicate things." "Things are already complicated. You're just managing the appearance of them." She said it without accusation. It was, again, simply accurate, and they both knew it. "I spent the first 8 days here waiting for you to use the leash. You didn't. I spent the next 11 days waiting for you to behave well only when it was easy." She paused. "You haven't, so far. Don't start now because a report is uncomfortable." Cael looked at the diagnostic panel. He looked at the hangar ceiling. He looked at the fact that she was right, which was not a comfortable shape but was the correct one. He filed the report accurately. Command sent 3 follow-up queries. He answered all of them. Nothing further came of it, which was either bureaucratic inertia or institutional indifference, and either way it did not matter. What mattered was the report, and the report was correct. Seva did not mention it again. She did not need to. The communique arrived on the 23rd day, at 6:30, while Cael was in the middle of his second cup of the improved coffee. It was flagged priority standard, which was the military's way of saying this matters, but we are not going to alarm you about it, and it was from the regional command hub 4 systems away. Commander Marin Voss, it informed him, was conducting a quarterly asset review and welfare inspection of all active outposts in the sector. She would arrive at Outpost 7 in 11 days. Her visit would include a full operational review, a personnel status assessment, and an audit of all compensation asset assignments currently active within her command region. Cael read the communique twice. He read the phrase compensation asset assignments and felt it in the specific way you felt things that had been abstract becoming concrete. He set down the coffee. Through the open doorway of the kitchen, he could hear Seva in the command center, the small sounds of someone working, a stylus on a surface, the muted feedback tone of the holographic map being adjusted. The ordinary sounds of a morning that had, over 23 days, become the sounds of a shared space. He should tell her. He knew he should tell her. The communique was not classified, it was not sensitive, it was simply information that directly affected her and that she had every right to have. He read the phrase asset review one more time. He closed the communique. He told himself he would tell her when he had more information, when he understood what the visit would mean in practical terms, when he had something more concrete to give her than uncertainty wrapped in institutional language. He told himself this, and he knew it was partially true and partially not, and he went into the command center and said good morning, and she looked up and said the gravity fluctuation in Section B had stabilized. And he said good, and the morning continued with the shape it had developed, and the communique sat in his inbox like something that had not yet decided what it was going to become. On the 27th day, she taught him 3 words in Virelli. It happened without ceremony. They were in the command center after the evening meal. She was annotating supply manifests. He was reviewing sector patrol schedules that he would have found entirely tedious before, and still found mostly tedious now, but had begun to perform with more attention since Seva had pointed out that 2 of his patrol routes passed directly through zones that the official maps listed as clear, but that her analysis of atmospheric particulate suggested had seen recent chemical activity. She had been right, the routes had been adjusted. He was reviewing the adjusted routes when she said, without looking up, in Virelli, the word for a person who is not family but not a stranger is Vetharo. Cael looked up from his patrol schedule. There isn't a direct human equivalent, she continued, still annotating. Your languages tend toward binary categories, family or not, known or unknown, safe or unsafe. A pause. Virelli recognizes that most meaningful relationships exist in the space between categories. He was quiet for a moment. What are the other 2 words? She looked up then. The expression on her face was the one he had seen only a handful of times, the one that existed before she decided how to present what she was actually thinking, in the fraction of a second before the decision was made. It was the most honest expression she had, and he had learned to recognize it the way you learn to recognize the moment before weather changed. Seva Kern, she said, the specific exhaustion of maintaining a version of yourself that does not match what you have actually become. He felt that one land somewhere specific. And the 3rd, she returned to the manifest. Ori vast, the moment you decide to trust something you know might fail. The command center was quiet. The holographic map turned slowly. Outside, the dust plains ran flat and dark toward the horizon. Are you teaching me vocabulary, Cael said, or are you telling me something? Both, she said. They're not mutually exclusive. He looked at the patrol schedules and did not see them. He thought about the communique in his inbox, now 4 days old. He thought about Ori Vast and the specific weight it carried, and about the fact that she was extending something that cost her a great deal to extend, and that he was sitting on information that would matter to her, and that the distance between those 2 things was not acceptable. Marin Voss is coming, he said. Seva's stylus stopped moving. She's a commander, regional, she's doing an asset review. He said it to the patrol schedules because he was a coward in small ways, if not large ones. She'll be here in 7 days. It will include an audit of your status. The silence that followed had a different quality from their usual silences, which had become, over 27 days, mostly comfortable. This one was the silence of something being reassessed. How long have you known? Seva said. He could have rounded. He could have said a few days or recently, and both would have been technically defensible. 4 days, he said. The stylus resumed moving, once, then stopped again. Why are you telling me now? Because I should have told you 4 days ago. He looked at her then. I'm sorry. She did not tell him it was fine. He was grateful for that. It was not fine, and she knew it was not fine, and they had been doing well enough with each other that pretending otherwise would have cost something real. What does the review mean? She said, practically. I don't know yet. He said it plainly. She'll assess the assignment, review operational integration. I don't know what conclusions she'll draw. Will she want to see the leash activated? The question was asked in the same even tone she used for everything, and it hit him in the same place the word asset had hit him 11 days ago, but harder. I don't know, he said. I hope not. Seva was quiet for a long time. Then she picked up the stylus and continued annotating the manifest with the careful, systematic attention she brought to everything, and Cael watched her and understood that she was not dismissing the conversation. She was processing it in the only way available to someone who had learned that visible reactions were liabilities. He did not try to fill the silence. She worked until the late hour, and he worked beside her, and the space between them held everything they had not yet said about what 7 days meant, and what a commander's assessment meant, and what Ori Vast meant when the thing you were deciding to trust had just revealed one of its limits. When she stood to go, she paused at the doorway. Thank you, she said, for telling me. She did not say, "You should have told me sooner." She had already said that precisely by not saying it was fine. He understood the economy of it. "Seva." She stopped. "Whatever she decides to review," he said. "I want you to know that He ran out of words that were accurate and not too much. I'm going to handle it." She looked at him for a moment with those dark, assessing eyes that had been assessing him since the first minute in the hangar and had, he suspected, arrived at conclusions he was not entirely privy to. "I know," she said. She went down the corridor, the lock engaged. Cael sat in the command center with the holographic map, turning slowly overhead, and thought about what "I know" meant coming from someone who had been taught by sustained experience not to know anything about anyone. He thought it was possibly the most significant thing she had said to him in 27 days. He opened his inbox and began drafting a very careful message to Commander Marin Voss. Commander Marin Voss arrived on a Thursday, which Cael had decided was only marginally better than a Tuesday. Her shuttle touched down at 800 with the precise punctuality of someone who used timeliness as a form of authority, a message delivered before any word was spoken. Cael was in the hangar when she stepped out, and he recognized her immediately from the command files. Mid-50s, compact, with the kind of face that had been weathered into something harder and more honest than it had probably started as. She wore her rank without decoration. She looked at the outpost the way experienced officers looked at everything, as a collection of variables to be assessed. She looked at Cael the same way. "Lieutenant Holt," she extended a hand, her grip was brief and complete. "Commander Voss," he matched it. "Welcome to Outpost 7. She looked around the hangar. Her eyes found the maintenance droid, now fully functional and performing an entirely unnecessary polish of the shuttle landing pad with what could only be described as pride. They found the updated power junction panel on the east wall, the new conduit routing, the recalibrated atmospheric sensors. They found all of it with the attention of someone who noticed when things had changed. "Your last efficiency report was notably improved," she said. "We've had some upgrades." "So I see," she looked at him. "Where is the asset?" The word landed in the hangar, and Cael let it land without reacting, which was its own kind of reaction. Seva was at the holographic map when they entered, running what appeared to be a particulate dispersion analysis of the eastern dust plains. She had been running analyses of various kinds for the past 7 days with a focus and consistency that Cael recognized as the productive expression of controlled anxiety. She had not mentioned Voss again after that night in the command center. She had been, if anything, more present, more conversation, more annotated logs, more cups of something warm left at the edge of his workstation in the mornings. He had understood this as the behavior of someone who was paying attention to what they had while they still had it, and refusing to perform distress about the alternative. She turned when they entered. She assessed Voss in the same way she assessed every room, exits first, then variables, then the primary unknown. Voss assessed her with the systematic attention of institutional review. "Commander Voss," Cael said, "this is Seva." Voss looked at him briefly at the name, the absence of classification number, the absence of asset designation. Then she looked at Seva. "Your operational integration has been noted in the lieutenant's reports," she said. "The infrastructure improvements are significant." Seva looked at her with the expression she used when she was deciding how much a person deserved. "Thank you," she said, in the tone of someone acknowledging a fact rather than receiving a compliment. Voss almost smiled. It was a small, professional movement gone quickly. "I'll need 2 hours for the operational review this morning," she said to Cael, "and a private conversation this afternoon." She looked at the map, the analysis running across it, the careful annotations in the margins of every surface in the room. "I can see the outpost is in capable hands in the meantime." She left for the eastern quarters, where Cael had prepared the guest accommodation. The command center was quiet. Seva looked at the doorway Voss had gone through. "She's not cruel," she said. "No. That might be worse." She returned to the map. Her hands were steady. "Cruel people make mistakes. Careful people follow procedures." Cael did not have an answer for that. He went to prepare for the operational review, and the outpost continued its morning around them, and the gravity generators hummed at 87%, and everything was ordinary and nothing was fine. The operational review took 3 hours rather than 2. Voss was thorough in the way of people who respected thoroughness as a value in itself, not just a tool. She reviewed the maintenance logs, the supply manifests, the patrol route adjustments, the infrastructure modifications. She asked precise questions and received precise answers and wrote notes on her data pad with the focused attention of someone building something from the details rather than confirming something they already believed. Cael answered everything accurately. He had decided sometime in the 7 days since the communiqué that accuracy was the only position he could hold with integrity. He did not volunteer more than was asked. He did not obscure what was there to be seen. When Voss asked who had identified the chemical activity in the Eastern Patrol zones, he said Seva. When she asked how Seva had accessed the atmospheric data, he said she had requested it and he had authorized the access. When she asked why, he said because she was better at reading it than anyone else at the outpost. Voss wrote something on her data pad. After the review, she walked the outpost perimeter with Cael in the pale afternoon light. The dust plains stretched to the horizon, flat and rust-colored, with the distant ridge of the northern range cutting a dark line against the sky. The atmospheric dome created a faint prismatic shimmer at its edges where sunlight hit the seal membrane, and the effect was, in certain lights, almost beautiful. "Your reports have been honest," Voss said, "not a compliment, an observation." "I try." Most lieutenants in asset assignments learn to write around the edges, make the integration sound more administrative than it is. She looked at the planes. "You haven't done that." "No. Why not?" Cael thought about Seva saying your report is inaccurate in 2 ways. About the maintenance droid and the toaster and the 3 Virelli words and the cup of cocoa left at the tower access hatch. About 27 days of someone existing in a space and becoming, through the ordinary accumulation of presence, real. "Because it would have required lying," he said. Voss was quiet for a moment. They walked another 30 meters along the perimeter before she spoke again. "I like you, Holt," she said. "I want to tell you that before I tell you the rest." He kept his eyes on the planes. "Seva's classification is being reviewed at the regional level," Voss said. "Her background as a Virelli communications specialist puts her in a category of particular interest to the research division at Hello Station. They've been building a translation and intelligence framework for 3 years. They need people who understand Virelli communications systems from the inside." She paused. "The transfer order was submitted 6 weeks ago. I signed it 2 weeks after that. Her new classification takes effect in 4 days." Cael stopped walking. "The transfer window opens in 72 hours, Voss continued. She was not looking at him. She was looking at the planes with the expression of someone delivering information they have decided it is their professional obligation to deliver. "She'll be transported to Hello Station for a full integration assessment. Her skills will be utilized." The word utilized sat in the cold outpost air. "She's not a tool," Cael said. "Under current classification, she is a Class 4 asset," Voss said, with the evenness of someone who was not arguing the point, simply stating the framework. "Her skills make her a valuable one. The research division has submitted significant justification." "She's a person." "Holt," Voss turned to look at him then. Her expression was not unkind. That was, as Seva had predicted, worse. "I know what she is. I've been doing this for 20 years. I know what they all are." Something moved in her face, a brief, contained thing like a weather system passing through. "That doesn't change what the order says." "Can it be contested?" She looked at him for a long moment. "Formally, yes. A command-level review can be requested if the presiding officer identifies operational grounds for contesting a transfer. The review process takes between 30 and 90 days. She paused. "The transfer window opens in 72 hours. The math was simple and bad. "And informally," he said. Voss looked at the planes again. "I would need an operational justification I could put my name on," she said. "Something beyond," she stopped, started again. "I would need it to be about the outpost, not about whatever else it might be about." She was giving him something. He understood that. She was giving it to him carefully, in the exact shape of something that could be taken or left, and she was doing it because she was not entirely the institution she served, and she knew it, and she had chosen to deliver the information before the 72-hour window opened rather than after it closed. "Thank you," he said. She nodded once and turned back toward the outpost. "I'll need your response by tomorrow morning," she said, "whatever it is." She went inside. Cael stood at the perimeter and looked at the dust plains for a long time. The light was changing, going amber at the horizon, and the dome's shimmer was stronger in the low-angle light, and somewhere inside the outpost Seva was at the holographic map running her analysis with steady hands. He had 72 hours. He had not told her. He was going to have to tell her. He found her on the tower. He had known she would be there. It was where she went when the outpost felt like what it was, and he suspected that today it had felt like what it was with particular clarity. He climbed to the access hatch, and this time he went all the way up, pulling himself through the hatch onto the narrow platform at the top of the tower where the dome met the open dark. She was sitting with her knees drawn up, looking at the eastern ridge. She heard him come up and did not turn. He sat beside her. The stars were beginning to show at the dome's upper edge, faint and cold, the early ones that appeared before full dark. The dust plains were going dark red in the last of the light. "She told you," Seva said. It was not a question. "Yes. And you're telling me now." A pause. "Not in 4 days." "Not in 4 days." She was quiet. The wind came off the plains in a long sweep, and her ears adjusted to it, the small, continuous calibration of someone always reading the air. "Hello, station," she said. "Yes." "I know what it is." She said it to the ridge, to the darkening plains. "The research division has been building a Virelli intelligence framework. They've been trying to acquire communications specialists for 2 years. Her voice was even. It was the evenness of someone who has had practice receiving terrible news and has become, through that practice, very good at the performance of composure. "They will want everything I know, every protocol, every encryption method, She stopped. "They will call it research." Cael could not look at the plains anymore. He looked at her instead, at the profile of her face against the darkening sky, the arched ears, the silvered ash of her skin in the last light. At the person who had fixed the coffee and negotiated with the toaster and taught him 3 words and left cups of warm things at the edges of places without making anything of it. "I'm going to contest it," he said. She turned to look at him then. It was the first time she had looked at him directly since he came up through the hatch, and the expression on her face was the one he had only seen a handful of times, the unguarded one, the one before the decision about how to present what she was actually feeling. "Holt," she said. "Cael." A pause, something moved in her face. "Cael." She said his name like she was placing it carefully somewhere. "A formal contest will trigger a command review. You'll be on record as refusing a signed transfer order." "I know. That's your rank." "Probably. Possibly your posting." "Yes." "For what?" She held his gaze. Her voice was not soft. It was direct, the way she was always direct, but underneath the direction there was something that was asking a real question and needed a real answer. "I am not asking you to do this. I want to be clear about that. I am not asking." "I know you're not." "Then why?" He thought about Ori Vast, the moment you decide to trust something you know might fail. He thought about the data pad he had placed face down in the hangar on the first day and left there, and about every day since, and about the report he had filed accurately because she had told him the truth was worth the discomfort. "Because you fixed the coffee," he said. "And you shouldn't have to. You shouldn't have to fix anything in exchange for being treated like a person. You just should be. And that's not what's happening here, and I can see it, and I can't." He stopped, found the edge of what he could say accurately. "I can't not see it anymore." The stars were coming through fully now, the dome rendering them in the slightly flattened way of filtered sky, not quite raw but close enough. Seva looked at him for a long time with the expression of someone adding up a very long column of figures and arriving, unexpectedly, at a number they had not anticipated. "You're going to lose your rank," she said. "Maybe." "You're going to have to find a justification Voss can put her name on." "I'm working on it." She looked at the stars. Her hands were in her lap still. "There's a technical argument," she said slowly. "In the transfer protocol, asset reclassification requires a full leash integrity audit before transfer can be authorized. If the audit is requested through official channels, it must be completed within the transfer window or the window lapses." She paused. "A leash integrity audit for a Class 4 asset requires a specialist from the Biological Systems Division. The nearest one is at Perrin Station. Transit time from Perrin to Outpost 7 is 78 hours. The transfer window was 72 hours. Cael looked at her. I noticed it 6 days ago, she said, when I was reviewing the transfer protocol documentation. She held his gaze. I did not tell you because I was not sure you would use it. The quiet that followed was the kind that held a great deal without requiring it to be named. And now, he said. She looked at the planes one more time, the dark red going to black at the edges, the last of the light collecting at the horizon. She looked at the outpost below them, the dome shimmer, the pale rock of the plateau. She looked at all of it with the expression of someone who has been making a calculation for 6 days and has arrived in this moment at the end of it. Now I'm telling you, she said. Cael got up. He went to the hatch. He stopped with his hand on the edge of it and looked back at her, silhouetted against the star-filled dome, small and upright on the top of the world. I'll need you to walk me through the exact protocol language, he said. Tonight, all of it. I know, she said. Go, I'll be down in a few minutes. He went down through the hatch and into the outpost and directly to the command center, and he pulled up every piece of transfer protocol documentation in the system. And outside above him, Seva sat on the tower for a few more minutes alone with the stars and the wind, and whatever she was deciding. And when she came down through the hatch, her face was composed and her eyes were clear, and she sat across from him at the command center table and opened the documentation and began. The request for a leash integrity audit went through official channels at 2340 hours, filed under Cael's command authorization with the precise bureaucratic language. Seva had walked him through line by line across 3 hours of documentation review. She had been exact. She was always exact. The request cited subsection 7, paragraph 4 of the Asset Transfer Protocol, the clause requiring full biological leash integrity certification prior to any Class 4 reclassification, and formally submitted a specialist request to the Biological Systems Division at Perrin Station. The automated response came back in 4 minutes. Request acknowledged. Specialist assignment in progress. Estimated transit time to designated outpost, 78 hours. 78 hours? The transfer window was 72. Cael read the confirmation twice. Then he sent a copy to Voss's outpost terminal with a single line of accompanying text, operational grounds. Subsection 7, paragraph 4, transfer window lapses before audit can be completed. He sat back in his chair. Seva was across the table, reading the confirmation on her own screen. Her face gave nothing away. He had learned to read the smaller things, the stillness of her ears when she was processing something important, the particular quality of her attention when she was deciding whether to believe something. Both were present now. It'll hold, he said. The protocol will hold, she said. The question is what comes after the protocol. He knew what she meant. The audit would lapse the transfer window, but a lapsed window was not a closed door. The research division would refile. Voss would receive a new order. The system would reassert itself with the patient, institutional persistence of something that did not need to hurry because it had all the time there was. What the audit bought was not freedom, it was time. I know, he said. Then you need to understand what you're filing for. She looked at him directly. This buys weeks, perhaps a month if the reclassification review is thorough. It does not end it. I know that too. She was quiet for a moment. Then what is your plan for the month? He had been asking himself this since he climbed down from the tower. He had an answer, but it was the kind of answer that was easier to have in principle than to say aloud, because saying it aloud made it real and real things had consequences. The genetic leash, he said. The authorization to remove it sits at command level. Voss has it. He paused. If I can make a formal case for reclassification, not transfer, reclassification, based on the post-war civilian integration framework that went into effect 4 months ago. I've read the framework, Seva said. Then you know it includes a provision for asset reclassification to civilian status for any individual who can demonstrate functional autonomy, cultural integration, and absence of ongoing security risk, she said. Section 12, subsection 3, she looked at the table. I read it the week it was implemented. I read everything that might be relevant. A pause. I did not mention it because the provision requires the presiding officer to personally authorize the reclassification. It cannot be filed without Voss. I know. She looked up. You're going to ask her? Yes. She signed the transfer order. She also told me about the 72-hour window before it opened. He held Seva's gaze. She's not only the order, she's also the person who delivered the information that let us respond to it. Seva considered this with the focused attention she brought to structural problems, looking for the load-bearing element, the thing the rest depended on. He watched her find it and sit with it and decide what it meant. She'll want something she can put her name on, Seva said, echoing Voss's own words back with precise accuracy. Yes. And if she says no? Cael was quiet for a moment. Then I escalate above her, full formal review. I put everything on record, the infrastructure work, the patrol analysis, the chemical zone identification, all of it. And I make the case through official channels that you have already demonstrated everything Section 12 requires. That will take months. They will refile the transfer in the interim. I know. You will lose your rank regardless at that point. I know that too. Seva looked at him for a long time. The command center was very quiet. The holographic map turned slowly overhead, the star systems drifting in their patient arcs. Why, she said, not the version she had asked on the tower, which had been about this specific action. This was a larger question, asked more quietly, and it meant something different. He thought about how to answer it accurately. Because you told me what Orivast means, he said, and I think I owe it to that word to actually do it. She did not respond immediately. Something moved in her face, the unguarded expression, brief as always, gone before it fully arrived. When she spoke again, her voice was even, but the evenness had a different quality than usual, softer at the edges. Go to sleep, Cael, she said. You have a difficult conversation in the morning. He went. He found Voss at 700 in the eastern quarters, reviewing her own documentation with the focused attention of someone who had been awake longer than she would admit. She looked up when he knocked and assessed him with the quick efficiency that was. He had decided, simply how she saw the world, not coldly, but completely. I received your audit request, she said. Yes. Subsection 7, paragraph 4. She set down her data pad. Clean, precise. Someone who understood the protocol very well helped you find that. He did not confirm or deny. I'd like to talk to you about Section 12, Subsection 3 of the Civilian Integration Framework. Voss was quiet for a moment, then she gestured to the chair across from her. He sat. He laid it out plainly, the way he had been composing it since the tower, not as an argument built for persuasion, but as an accurate account of what had happened over 34 days at Outpost 7. The infrastructure modifications, the patrol analysis, the chemical zone identification that had prompted a sector-wide route review, the power grid efficiency improvement that Command had already noted in 3 separate reports, the atmospheric filtration repair, the COM encryption update. He laid it out as facts, because facts were what Section 12 required, and because Seva had told him the truth was worth the discomfort, and he had decided she was right. Then he stopped laying out facts, and said the thing that was not a fact but was true. She's not a security risk, he said. She hasn't been from the first day. She is a person who has been placed in an untenable situation and has responded with more integrity than most people I've served with. Section 12 exists precisely for this, and I am formally requesting that you authorize the reclassification. Voss looked at him for a long time. The silence had several phases. The first was assessment. The second was something he could not entirely read, the brief weather system movement he had seen on the perimeter the day before, the almost humanity she had shown and then retreated from. The third was decision. If I authorize this, she said slowly, I am on record as overriding a signed transfer order from the research division. They will file a formal objection. Yes. My authorization will be reviewed. Yes. And your rank review will proceed regardless. You filed a counter-request against a signed order. That's already in the system. I know. She picked up her data pad, set it down again, looked at the wall of the eastern quarters with the expression of someone examining the distance between where they were and where they thought they would be at this point in their life. I have been doing this for 20 years, she said. I have processed 47 asset assignments in 11 years of post-conflict operations. She paused. I have never authorized a Section 12 reclassification. Cael waited. Not because I didn't see the grounds, she said. Because the grounds were never, she stopped, started again more carefully. Because I told myself the system would find its own corrections, that it was not my specific role to, she stopped again. He did not fill the silence. He let her find the end of her own sentence. She did not find it. What she did instead was pick up her data pad and open a file and begin entering authorization codes with the focused precision of someone who had made a decision and was implementing it before they could unmake it. Section 12, subsection 3, she said. Functional autonomy documented in 34 days of operational logs, cultural integration, a brief pause evidenced by the same. Absence of ongoing security risk, the patrol analysis alone is sufficient. She entered a final code. Leash removal authorization requires the biological systems specialist regardless. They're already in transit for the audit. I'll amend the order to include a removal procedure. She looked up. The specialist arrives in 78 hours. It will be done then. Cael did not move for a moment. Commander, he said. Don't, she said, the same word Seva used in a different voice for a similar reason. I'm not doing this for commendation. I'm doing it because the framework exists and the grounds are met, and I have been telling myself for 11 years that I follow the rules, and it turns out I have been following some of them very selectively. She stood. The research division will object. I will respond to the objection. That is my problem and not yours. She picked up her data pad and walked toward the door. Holt, she said without turning. Commander, your rank review will likely result in a demotion. 1 grade, possibly 2. They won't discharge you, your service record is too clean and the Section 12 grounds are legitimate. But you'll feel it. I know. She left. He sat in the eastern quarters for a moment, looking at the wall she had looked at, thinking about 47 assignments and 11 years, and the distance between the rules you followed and the ones you didn't, and what it cost to notice that distance clearly for the first time. Then he went to find Seva. She was in the kitchen. She was doing something deliberate and unnecessary with a hot plate, adjusting a setting that did not need adjusting, moving a container that did not need moving. And he understood immediately that she had been waiting in the kitchen because it was the room closest to the eastern quarters where she could plausibly be occupied with something, and that she had heard him coming down the corridor and had made herself stay at the hot plate rather than turn around. He stopped in the doorway. She turned. He told her, all of it, Voss's authorization, the Section 12 grounds, the leash removal in 78 hours. He said it plainly and in the correct order, and he watched her face move through several things he could not fully name, and he did not try to name them because they were hers. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. The hot plate hummed. Somewhere in the outpost, the gravity generator cycled through its morning fluctuation, and the chair in the corner achieved its brief melancholy hover and settled back. 78 hours, she said. Yes. She turned back to the hot plate. Her hands were on the counter, not quite gripping it. He could see the stillness in them, the controlled stillness that was the external face of something that was not still at all. Seva, I need a minute, she said. He waited in the doorway. The minute passed. She did not cry, he did not know if Virelli cried, and this did not seem like the moment to find out, and what she was doing was not grief anyway. It was something more complicated than grief, the feeling of something you had stopped believing and becoming real, which required a different kind of processing. When she turned around, her eyes were clear, and her posture was what it always was, and she looked at him with the direct, assessing look that had been looking at him since the hangar. Thank you, she said. Don't, he said. Something moved in her face, the ghost of the smile, present for a half-second. You're going to lose your rank, she said. 1 grade, maybe 2. I'm sorry. Don't be, he meant it. I filed that report accurately because you told me to. This is the same thing, it's just a bigger report. She looked at him for a moment. Then she turned to the hot plate and began making 2 cups of something warm with the focused, careful attention she brought to everything, and he leaned against the doorframe and watched her, and the outpost moved around them in its ordinary way. The hum of the generators, the soft tick of the atmospheric sensors, the maintenance droid rolling past the kitchen door on its morning circuit with an air of profound professional satisfaction. You'll need to decide, he said, after what you want to do. She did not look up from the hot plate. I know. You can stay if you want. There's work here clearly, and the toaster requires ongoing diplomatic relations. He kept his voice even because this was not a thing to put weight on. Or you can go back to Virelli space or anywhere else. The reclassification gives you civilian status. You'll have options you don't have now. She poured 2 cups. She handed him one. She did not answer the question. He understood that the question was not one she could answer yet, and that 78 hours was not the time to answer it in, and that what she needed between now and then was not a decision about the future, but simply the ordinary continuation of the present, the hot plate and the annotated logs and the tower at night, and the specific shape of the days that they had built here without intending to build anything. He took the cup. "The Eastern Patrol report needs updating," she said. "I know." And the Section B gravity generator is showing early signs of the same fault pattern it had in week 2. I'll need access to the subfloor conduit. "You have access to everything." She looked at him over the rim of her cup. "I know," she said. "I'm telling you anyway." He understood. She was telling him anyway because telling him was a choice, and the choice was the point. And the point was that she was beginning, carefully, incrementally, at a pace entirely her own, to practice what it felt like to do things because she decided to, rather than because she had to. He drank the coffee. It was still, as it had been since she fixed it, significantly better than it had any right to be. The 78 hours passed the way difficult waiting always passed, unevenly, with the slow sections feeling very slow and the fast sections feeling like something being taken. Voss spent most of it in the eastern quarters, working. She came to meals with the focused efficiency of someone maintaining normal operations under unusual conditions, and she said what needed to be said and nothing more, and Cael respected her for it. On the second evening, she found him on the perimeter walk. "The research division filed their objection," she said. "I expected that. My response goes in tomorrow morning." She looked at the planes. "I want you to know that I'm not," she paused. "I'm not doing this reluctantly. I want to be clear about that. I made a decision and I am not retreating from it." "I know," he said. She was quiet for a moment. "She's remarkable," Voss said, not warmly exactly. Voss did not do warmth easily, but honestly. "The infrastructure work alone is she did in 34 days what this outpost's maintenance budget couldn't accomplish in 2 years. A pause. "The research division knows that. It's why they want her." "She's not a resource." "No," Voss looked at the horizon. "She's not." She said it the way you said things when you had finally, at significant personal cost, arrived at the correct position and were statting it for the record. "Get some sleep, Holt. The specialist arrives at 600. She went inside. Cael stood at the perimeter for a while longer. The dome shimmer was strong in the evening light, fracturing the sunset into something richer than it would have been without it. He thought about Voss and her 47 assignments and 11 years of selective rule following, and about the specific courage of changing a pattern you had held for a long time, and about how it did not look like courage from the outside because it was quiet and came too late and did not fix everything. It still counted. He went back inside and knocked on the command center door. Seva was at the map. She looked up. "Tomorrow at 600, he said. She held his gaze. Her ears were very still, the stillness of something that had stopped reading the air because it had all the information it needed. "I know," she said. He nodded. He started to turn. "Cael." He stopped. She looked at him across the command center with all the direct, unguarded clarity of someone who had decided that the careful management of distance had its limits, and that this was one of them. "Thank you," she said. "Not for the reclassification," for she stopped, found the right shape for it. "For the cup of cocoa at the tower hatch on the 9th day, you didn't come up, you left it at the edge." He understood what she meant, that the gesture had mattered specifically because it had not asked for anything. "You were up there," he said simply. "Yes," she said, "I was." The command center held them for a moment. "Good night, Seva." "Good night." He went down the corridor to his sleeping pod, and the gravity generator cycled quietly, and the outpost settled into its nighttime sounds, the atmospheric sensors, the hum of the dome, the soft, purposeful rolling of the maintenance droid on its evening circuit, and somewhere in it all, 2 people lay in separate rooms on a terraform moon, 78 hours become 12, and waited for morning. The biological systems specialist arrived 7 minutes early, which Cael took as either a good sign or the universe's way of maintaining its pattern of Tuesday-quality surprises on other days of the week. She was young, younger than he had expected, with the efficient, slightly overworked look of someone who had been in transit for 3 days and had spent the journey reviewing documentation rather than sleeping. Her name was Specialist Dory Ank, and she shook hands with the directness of someone who had learned to compensate for her age with precision, and she carried a case of equipment that she handled with the careful attention of someone who understood exactly what it was for and did not romanticize it. Cael met her at the hangar. Voss was there too, standing to one side with her data pad and the expression of someone overseeing a procedure they had authorized and intended to see through completely. "The reclassification documentation is confirmed," Ank said, reviewing her own pad. "Section 12, subsection 3, Commander Voss's authorization is on file." She looked up. "Where is the subject?" The word subject landed the way these words always landed now, with a weight Cael felt in his chest before he consciously registered it. "Her name is Seva," he said. Ank looked at him briefly. Something shifted in her expression, not apology exactly, but adjustment. "Where is Seva?" "Command Center." Seva was at the holographic map when they came in. She had been there when Cael checked at 5:30, and he suspected she had been there most of the night, not because she was anxious in any way she would have named, but because the map and the annotated logs and the work that needed doing were the things that kept the present tense real, and the present tense was what she had, and she had learned a long time ago to hold it carefully. She turned when they entered. She assessed Ank with a quick systematic scan, exits, variables, primary unknown, and arrived at her conclusions in the space of 3 seconds. Ank assessed her too, with the particular attention of someone whose professional training was in biological systems, and who was therefore looking at things the rest of them were not. "Seva," Ank said, "I'm Specialist Ank. I'll be performing the leash removal procedure today." She said it straightforwardly, without the bureaucratic softening that would have been worse. "I want to explain the process before we begin, if that's acceptable." Seva looked at her for a moment. "Yes," she said. Ank explained. The genetic leash was encoded at the molecular level, a targeted protein sequence threaded through Seva's biological architecture at the point of original implementation. Removal required a specific enzymatic agent that Ank would administer in 2 stages, followed by a 40-minute monitoring period to confirm full sequence dissolution. There would be some discomfort during the 2nd stage, nothing lasting. Seva listened to all of it with the composed attention she brought to technical explanations. She asked 2 precise questions about the enzymatic agent and its interaction with Virelli biochemistry. Ank answered both thoroughly, with the respect of someone who had not expected the questions and was glad to have been asked them. Cael stood near the door and did not say anything, because there was nothing to say that was his to say. Voss stood beside him with her data pad. "She asked good questions," Voss said quietly. "She always does," he said. The procedure took 53 minutes. Cael spent most of it in the hangar, doing nothing useful. He checked the supply manifest twice without retaining any of it. He had a conversation with the maintenance droid that consisted entirely of him standing near it while it polished the same section of floor it had been polishing for 20 minutes, apparently finding the repetition soothing. He understood the impulse. At the 40-minute mark, he went back to the command center doorway and stopped outside it. Through the open door, he could hear Ank's voice, low and professional, running through the confirmation checklist. He could hear the soft feedback tone of her monitoring equipment. He could not hear Seva. He waited. At 53 minutes, Ank came out carrying her case. She looked at Cael with the expression of someone who had done their job and done it well, and understood that the significance of it extended beyond the technical. "Complete dissolution confirmed," she said. "No residual sequence detected. She's clear." A pause. "She should rest for a few hours. The 2nd stage takes something out of you even when it goes cleanly." "Thank you," he said. Ank nodded. She went toward the hangar where her shuttle was waiting, pausing once to look back at the outpost with the expression of someone filing something away for later consideration. Then she went. Cael stood in the doorway. Seva was sitting at the table where the holographic map cast its slow turning light across the room. She was not looking at the map. She was looking at her own hands held open in her lap, palms up. Her ears were still. Her posture was the upright, composed posture she always carried, but something in it had shifted, not collapsed, nothing as dramatic as that. Lighter, perhaps, as though something that had been adding weight to every position she held had been quietly removed. She looked up when she heard him. He came in and sat across from her at the table, the way he had sat across from her for weeks of annotated logs and supply manifests and patrol schedules, and 3 Virelli words learned in the evenings. "How do you feel?" he said. She considered the question with the seriousness she gave to questions that deserved it. "Strange," she said. "Not bad, strange in the way of—" She looked at her hands again. "I have had it since I was captured, 14 months." She closed her hands slowly. "I keep expecting to feel the boundary of it. It is not there." He understood, imperfectly. The absence of a constraint you have lived with long enough to have incorporated into your sense of your own edges. "It'll take time," he said. "Yes," she looked at the map. "Aang said I should rest." "You should." "I know." She did not move immediately. She sat for a moment in the turning light of the map, in the ordinary sounds of the outpost morning, and he sat across from her and let the moment be what it was, not significant in any performed way, just real. "Voss is leaving this afternoon," he said. "I know, I heard the shuttle prep." She filed her response to the research division's objection this morning, before the procedure. He paused. "She didn't have to do that yet." Seva looked at him. "No," she said, "she didn't." A pause. "She is a more complicated person than the order she signed." "Most people are." She looked at him steadily, not always in directions that matter. He accepted that. It was accurate. She stood. She was moving carefully, not with pain exactly, but with the attention of someone whose body had been through something and was still reporting in. She went toward the corridor and stopped at the doorway. "Cael?" "Yes." "I'm going to sleep for a few hours." She looked at him over her shoulder. "Don't do anything structurally significant to the outpost while I'm not watching." He kept his face even. "I make no promises about the toaster." The ghost of the smile there and then gone. She went down the corridor. He sat at the table for a while in the turning light of the map, and outside the hangar the biological systems specialist's shuttle lifted off and climbed through the dome's shimmer into the pale sky. And the outpost made its ordinary sounds, and the gravity generator in Section B cycled through its morning fluctuation with the serene unreliability of something that had been meaning to fix itself for months. Voss left at 1400. She found Cael on the perimeter walk beforehand, which he suspected was intentional. She was not, he had decided, a person who left things unsaid when saying them cost her something. "The rank review board convenes in 3 weeks, she said. "You'll receive formal notification. I'd suggest preparing a written statement." "I will." "The Section 12 grounds are solid. Your service record is clean. I expect 1 grade demotion." She looked at the planes. "I've submitted a supporting statement to the review board for what it's worth." He looked at her. Thank you, Commander." "Voss," she said. Then, as though that had surprised even her, she added, "Under the circumstances." "Thank you, Voss." She looked at the planes for a moment longer. The dust was moving in long, low sweeps across the flat ground, catching the afternoon light. The ridge of the northern range was very clear today, each fold of rock visible in the dry air. 47 assignments, she said, not to him exactly, to the planes, to the accounting she was apparently in the middle of. "I told myself each time that the framework would self-correct, that my specific authorization wasn't that it wasn't mine to give individually, that the system had processes." She paused. "The system does have processes, I just participated in one." She turned to him. "It took considerably too long." "Yes," he said, because she was not asking for reassurance and he respected her enough not to offer it. She nodded once. She went back inside, and 40 minutes later her shuttle lifted off the hangar pad and turned south, and Cael watched it until it was a small, dark shape against the pale sky, and then nothing at all. The days that followed had a different quality. Not easier exactly. The rank review was coming, and the research division's objection was still working its way through channels. And there was a supply shortage in Section 4 that was going to require a creative solution. And the gravity generator in Section B had finally escalated from concerning pattern to actual problem and needed real attention. But the quality of the ordinary had shifted. Seva moved through the outpost differently. Not more freely in any dramatic sense. She had always moved where she chose. Cael had seen to that, but with a different relationship to her own movement. She still sat with her back to walls. She still scanned rooms. She suspected those habits would not leave quickly if they left at all, and she was right to not expect them to. But the scanning had changed its nature from threat assessment to something closer to orientation. She was learning the outpost as a place she was in, rather than a place she was surviving. He noticed this the way he noticed everything about her, carefully, without comment, filing it somewhere internal. She noticed him noticing. "You're watching me differently," she said on the fourth day after the procedure. They were in the command center, evening, the ordinary end-of-day review of systems and manifests that had become their unscheduled but consistent rhythm. "You're moving differently," he said. She considered this. "Yes," she looked at the map. "I keep catching myself checking for the boundary, the leash. It's like reaching for something that used to be in a specific place and finding the space empty." She paused. "Not bad, just surprising," repeatedly. "Does it get less surprising?" "I don't know yet," she looked at him. "I'll tell you when I have sufficient data." He smiled. She looked at the smile with the expression she used when she had decided it was acceptable to let him see that something had landed well. They returned to the manifests. On the 7th day after the procedure, the toaster screamed. It was 7:30, and Cael was still in the sleeping pod, and the sound was exactly the sound a small appliance would make if it had developed a complex emotional interior life and was having a difficult morning. He lay there for a moment assessing whether intervention was required. Seva's voice came through the open corridor, in Virelli, with the cadence of patient negotiation. A pause. The toaster made a smaller, more subdued sound. Seva's voice again, lower. Silence. Cael got up and went to the kitchen. Seva was standing at the counter with 2 pieces of toast on a plate and the expression of someone who had handled a delicate situation with appropriate diplomacy. "What did you tell it?" he said. "That it was valued," she said, "and that its distress was acknowledged, and that the bread had done nothing wrong." "Did it believe you?" "It produced the toast." She handed him the plate. "Whether it believed me is a philosophical question I am not qualified to answer before coffee." He ate the toast. She made the coffee. They stood at the counter in the morning light and were quiet together in the way they had learned to be quiet, not empty quiet, but full, the kind that did not need filling. "I've been thinking," she said. He waited. "About what comes next." She poured 2 cups and looked at hers. "You said I could stay or go, that the reclassification gave me options." "Yes. I have been trying to decide which decision I am actually making if I stay." She looked up. "There is a version of staying that is inertia, staying because I have not yet had sufficient time or resources to determine what else is possible. That version is not a choice, it's a delay." He understood the distinction. It was a very Seva distinction, precise about the difference between doing something and accepting the appearance of doing something. "And the other version," he said. "The other version is staying because I have assessed the available information and determined that this is where I want to be. For now, with the explicit understanding that it remains a choice and can be revisited." She looked at him steadily. "That version requires me to be honest about what the information actually is." "What is it?" She was quiet for a moment. The coffee was warm in their hands. The outpost made its morning sounds. The maintenance droid rolled past the kitchen doorway with a cheerful proprietary air, as though it had built the place itself. "You left a cup at a tower hatch," she said. "Without coming up, you filed a report accurately when it was uncomfortable. You told me about the communique 4 days late and said so directly without minimizing it. You contested a signed transfer order and lost a grade of rank and have not mentioned it since." She paused. "You have not asked me to be grateful." "No. You have not asked me to be anything." "No." She looked at her coffee. "I find that I want to stay," she said. "Not because I have to, not because I haven't yet determined the alternative, because I have assessed the available information and this is my conclusion." She looked up. "I wanted you to know the difference." Cael held the cup in both hands and looked at her, at the silvered ash of her skin in the morning light, the arched ears that were still now, the dark, careful eyes that had been assessing him since the first minute in the hangar and had arrived, over 38 days, at something he had not dared to anticipate. "I'm glad," he said. simply because it was true and the truth was worth more than anything more elaborate. She nodded, she drank her coffee, he drank his. "The Section B generator," she said. "I know. It needs the subfloor conduit work today. If we leave it another week, it becomes a full replacement. Do you need access to the maintenance stores?" "I already have the parts," she set down her cup. "I pulled them yesterday." He looked at her. "I had assessed the probability that we would still be here today," she said, with the expression of someone making a small admission they find slightly embarrassing and are choosing to make anyway. "I prepared accordingly." He thought about Ori Vast. The moment you decide to trust something you know might fail. She had pulled the parts yesterday, which meant she had made her decision yesterday or before, and had been carrying it the way she carried most things. Quietly, thoroughly, already 2 steps into the practical implications before she said a word about it. "Do you need a second pair of hands for the conduit work?" he said. "Probably." She picked up her tools from the counter where she had apparently also already placed them this morning. "You're adequate at subfloor access if supervised." "High praise." "Don't push it." She moved toward the door, stopped, looked back at him once with the direct, clear look that was the most honest thing about her. "Cael." "Yes." "Thank you for the coffee," she said. "The original coffee, the cardboard one that you drank every day without complaint before I fixed it." A pause. "It was a small thing. It is not a small thing." He understood. She was not thanking him for the coffee. She was thanking him for all the days before the coffee was fixed, all the days of the outpost as it had been, which was broken and difficult and underfunded and real, which he had inhabited without resentment, and into which he had placed a cup at a tower hatch without climbing up, and which she had watched and assessed and slowly, over 38 days, decided to believe. "Go fix the generator," he said. She went. He stood in the kitchen for a moment in the morning light, in the ordinary sounds of Outpost 7, the hum of the dome, the atmospheric sensors, the patient rolling of the maintenance droid, the toaster sitting in its corner in what he chose to interpret as a state of hard-won peace. Outside, the dust plains ran flat and rust-colored toward the horizon, and the northern ridge was clear against the pale sky, and somewhere below the subfloor of Section B, Seva was already working, already 3 steps into the problem, already making something function better than it had before she arrived. The rank review board convened in 2 weeks. The research division's objection was still in process. The system that had delivered her in a crate with a cheerful red sticker had not been reformed, and would not be reformed by one outpost on a terraform moon, and everyone in this story knew that. But in Section B, a generator was being fixed by someone who had chosen to fix it. That was not nothing. That was, in fact, the only place anything ever actually started. Not in the systems, not in the frameworks, not in the orders signed and contested and reviewed and refiled. In the specific, ordinary, irreducible choice of a person deciding what to do with the day in front of them. Cael washed the cups. He went to help with the generator.